Good morning, dear students. Pankaj is back to you. Um, so glad to see, so glad to meet you this morning. Today we're going to discuss literary terms. Now, by literary terms, I mean literary devices. And literary devices are the words or are the things that the poets use to beautify their poetry or to express their ideas more effectively. Literary devices or the literary terms, they're the same. Literary devices are the words or are the things that the poets use to beautify their poetry or to express their ideas more effectively. Let us begin with simile and metaphor. Now, simile and metaphor, both of them are very close to each other. They are two most used literary devices in poetry. Now, look at these examples. She is a rose and she is as beautiful as a rose. In the first sentence, she is a rose. It is metaphor. In the second one, she is as beautiful as a rose. It is simile. Let's do some more examples and then I'll explain it to you. He is a tiger. Or he is brave like a tiger. Now, he is a tiger is a metaphor. And he is brave like a tiger is simile. Now, how do we differentiate between the two? In both, there is a comparison between two unlike things. A simile is a comparison between two unlike things, and a metaphor is the comparison between two unlike things. And how do we differentiate between the two? Now, in the first, you call someone a rose or a tiger or the moon or something. But in the second one, you use the words like or as. Let's take one more example. He is a shrinking violet. Now, shrinking violet means a person who is very shy. Shrinking, he is a shrinking violet. It simply means it is a metaphor. But for example, if I said he is as shy as a violet. He is shy like a violet. This is a simile. Easy to understand. There is a comparison between two things in both of them. But in metaphor, you do not use the words like and as. But in simile, we do use them. Let me also write the definition to help you better. A comparison between two unlike things without the use of like and as. Whereas in simile, it is a comparison between two unlike things with the help of like and as. Isn't that wonderful? Let's take this example. He is a lamb and he is as innocent as a lamb. He is as innocent as a lamb. Now, or he is innocent like a lamb. Now, in the first one, he is a lamb. It's a metaphor because we are comparing a man to a lamb without the use of like or as. But in the second one and in the third one, he is as innocent as a lamb and he is innocent like a lamb. Both of them are examples of simile. Because here we are comparing a man with a lamb, of course, but with the use of as and like. I hope you have understood the difference between simile and metaphor. They're easy to understand and even easy to identify in the poem, isn't that? Next time you read the poem, just you'll find them there. Now, the second one is personification. Well, personification, the verb will be personify. Personify is making something into a person. Personify means making something into a person. Can I personify John? Can I personify Matthew? Can I personify Mary? Can I personify Maria? Well, I don't think I can. I cannot. Because they are already persons. You cannot personify John. You cannot personify Mary. Why? Because they are already persons. Then who do you personify? You personify something that is not a person. For example, you can personify your chair, your table, your computer, anything, anything that is not a person. So personification is actually giving human attributes to inanimate things or abstract ideas or natural phenomena. In this you give human identity to the things which are not human. In this you give human identity to the things which are not human. You give human attributes to inanimate things or abstract ideas or natural phenomena. Like you can personify love, because love is not a person, is it? Love is a feeling. You can personify love. You can personify affection, which means you can treat them as human beings, and that will be personification. You can personify abstract ideas. You can personify natural phenomena, means you can personify evening, which is a natural phenomenon. You can personify evening, you can personify noon, you can personify the stars, you can personify the moon, etc. You give them human identity. You make them behave like human beings do. You give them human attributes. That is how you personify them. For example, you remember that poem Mirror? In Mirror there is a line. Look at this line. Then she turns to those liars. Candles or the moon. Now, candles are inanimate things and moon is an object of nature. Now, then she turns to those liars, but candles and moon are treated as human beings here. They are said to be liars in this line. So in the poem, the mirror, the lady who looks herself in the mirror She turns to the liars, candles and moon. Candles and moon actually lie to her that she is beautiful, whereas she is not. Candles and moon lie to her that she is beautiful, whereas she is not. Clear? That's why candles and the moon are treated as lying human beings. Fine. That is one example, of course. Let me give you yet another example. You can personify time. Time is a subtle thief who steals your youth. Now, time is a subtle thief. Can time do something? Time is a thief. Time is treated as a human being. He is treated as a thief. As a thief steals something from you, time steals from you your youth. What happens? Your youth passes away very fast. So time is a subtle thief who steals your youth. Time has been personified here. In the first one, candles and the moon have been personified. In the second one, time has been personified. Look at this example. My table loves me very much. She shares my burden. Now, table is treated as a helpmate. Table is treated as a helpmate. Table is treated probably as the poet's beloved, or as the poet's wife, or as the poet's friend. Now, table loves him very much. She shares the poet's burden. Wow, the table has been personified. Can the table ever share someone's burden? No, no way. The table is actually sharing someone's burden here. Now, that's why table has been personified. I hope these examples are enough for you. Let's move to the next literary device. Third, apostrophe. Apostrophe means addressing someone. Addressing someone. Apostrophe is an address. For example, look at this example. Oh, pardon. Oh, pardon me. Thou bleeding piece of earth. Apostrophe is an address. It is addressing someone. Oh, pardon me, the bleeding piece of earth. The poet here is addressing the bleeding piece of earth, or addressing the earth as a bleeding piece and asking for his or her pardon. That is apostrophe. Let's take another example. Oh, blessed evening. Thou art a virgin, and so am I. I propose to thee. Will you be one with me? Now, here the poet is addressing evening, which is an apostrophe, of course. And the poet addresses evening as blessed evening. So there is an apostrophe. And then he continues giving evening different names. Thou art a virgin. Now, evening is being treated as a virgin. And then the poet says, so am I. And then he says, I propose to you. Will you marry me? That's what it is. So here evening there is an address. So we can say there is an apostrophe. But at the same time, because evening has been treated as a girl or a virgin woman, so it is the personification also, because evening has been personified as a virgin. Clear? So one line may have more than one figure of speech. I think these two examples are enough for you to understand apostrophe. Let's move on to the fourth literary device, which is irony. Well, let me just teach you the pronunciation of this word first. Iron, I-R-O-N, that is I in British English, and iron in American English. But as far as the irony is concerned, it is always pronounced irony. If you ever try to pronounce it irony, like some do, that would be wrong. The only pronunciation this word has is irony. It cannot have irony. Sorry, irony. It is just irony. You have to pronounce it irony. Now, irony is an interesting thing that we use in our daily life. For example, when a student comes late into my class, I say, "Hey, how come you're so early?" When a student comes late, I tell him, "Hey, how come you're so early?" If I see a thin boy, I call him, "You are so fat." If I see a fat man, I say, "You are so lean." If the student answers the question incorrectly, I say, "I'm proud of you, my boy, you're so intelligent." Irony is saying opposite of what you mean. Irony is saying opposite of what you mean. Let me describe the three examples again. If a student comes late into my class, I say, "Hey, how come you're so early?" Whereas he's late. If I see a thin boy, I say, "Hey, you're so fat." If I see a fat man, I say, "Hey, you're so thin, you're so lean." Irony is saying opposite of what you mean. With what intention do we say that? To be more effective. To be more effective. To create humor. To be more effective, to create humor, and to bring about correction or rectification. Which means correction. Irony is a weapon of satire, is an element of satire. In satire, irony is always there. It's a weapon of satire. So, irony is saying opposite of what you mean. To be more effective, to create humor, to bring about rectification. What happens when someone comes late into the class and I say, "Hey, you're so early?" The whole class laughs. And then that boy feels embarrassed, and next time he takes care to come on time. So, it does three things. I'm more effective, and I'm able to create humor, and then I bring about rectification. Isn't that amazing? We use it in our day-to-day life. It is not just confined to literature. It's everywhere. Like the title, "The Dear Departed." You remember it? Well, you remember this title? The Dear Departed. In this, what do you think when we read this title? The Dear Departed means someone is dead. Someone who was dear to us is dead, but actually he wasn't dead. So, in irony, we say opposite of what we mean. The dear departed means there was never a dead man. The man never died, but we're calling him departed. We say he has departed, he's gone, he's dead, but he wasn't. Like we call the thin person fat and we call the fat person thin. And we call the wise person foolish and we call the foolish person wise. That is irony. So here in this, the man really didn't die, but still the title is The Dear Departed, which is ironical. What is an irony now? Irony is saying opposite of what you mean, so that you are more effective and you do not hurt people, and you create humor and you bring about drastic rectification. Isn't that amazing? So I hope you understand it now. My dear student, if you are fat, I would call you thin. If you are thin, I'd call you fat. And I'm using irony. Clear? If you answer my question incorrectly, I'll say, wow, you're so intelligent. And are you getting me? That's it. Yeah. So let's move to the next one. Hyperbole. Hyperbole is deliberate exaggeration. Exaggeration. When you exaggerate things, there is hyperbole. For example, that boy is as tall as a pine tree. Now, can a boy really be as tall as a pine tree? That is hyperbole, that is exaggeration. I mean, a boy cannot be as tall as a pine tree, because pine tree is very tall. So there is exaggeration, and so it is hyperbole. Let's take another example. This is amazing. Just look at this. The growing boy's hands dangled a mile out of his sleeves. What the writer here is saying, the growing boy's hands, his hands hung a mile out of his sleeves. Can your hand ever hang a mile out of your sleeve? I mean, that is exaggeration. That is exaggeration of the highest degree. That is hyperbole, one of the greatest hyperboles ever found in the world. The growing boy's hands dangled a mile out of his sleeves. And then the boy is as tall as a pine tree. Let's take another example. You are as small as an ant, George. Now, can George ever be as small as an ant? George is George, he's a boy. Ant is too small. There's no comparison. That's exaggeration. Fine. I hope you have understood hyperbole. See, all these terms will be very helpful when you interpret literature next time. When you appreciate literature, they will be very necessary. Now, let's move to the next one, which is the fifth one, I think, or the sixth one, we never know. Ballad. Ballad is a narrative poem sung to music. A narrative poem sung to music. A ballad is a narrative poem sung to music. Narrative means a story. There is a poem, and in the poem there is a story, and it is sung to music. That is ballad. Clear? A ballad is a poem that tells a story and which can be sung to music. Narrative means a story. So a ballad is a poem that contains a story and that can be sung to music. Let me give you the examples of ballads. You have a ballad in class 9 also, and you have a ballad in class 10 also. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by S.T. Coleridge is a ballad. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by S.T. Coleridge is a ballad because it tells a story and that can be sung to music. Clear? The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a poem that tells a story and that can be sung to music. That is why it is a ballad. So I hope you understood that a ballad is a narrative poem sung to music. The second example is Lord Yuline's Daughter by Thomas Campbell. Lord Yuline's Daughter contains a story and that can be sung. That's a musical poem that has a story. That's why it is a ballad. Now you understand what is a ballad. Very good. 7. The next one. Alliteration. Now this is another beautiful figure of speech. Alliteration is a repetition of consonant sounds in a poem, or in prose also. A repetition of consonant sounds. A repetition of consonant sounds in a poem or even in prose. Just a repetition of consonant sounds is alliteration. For example, Peter's papa is peeling potatoes. That's funny. Peter's papa is peeling potatoes. The repetition of the sound of the consonant sound per. That's an alliteration. Peter's papa is peeling potatoes. Beautiful, isn't that? Another example. The polished actor pepped up the Polish politician. The polished actor pepped up the Polish politician. Now, per is repeated again, means that is the alliteration. You remember those things, you know, like in movies, it is often there, like Khadak Singh Ki Khidki and Chandni Chammach and something like that. You remember all those things? They are all the examples of alliteration. What is the importance of alliteration? It makes the poem look more beautiful. It creates music. It makes the poem more musical. Yeah, I was giving you the third example. She should share it with Shailesh. She should share it with Shailesh. She should share it with Shailesh. That's it. It was the 7th figure of speech, and I hope you have understood it full well. Now let's move on to the 8th one. Transferred epithet. Transferred epithet. A transferred epithet is the use of an adjective. Use of an adjective normally used for other nouns. Use of an adjective normally used for other nouns. Like a man can be wrinkled, a woman can be wrinkled, an old man can be wrinkled, an old woman can be wrinkled. But what about a wrinkled sea? A wrinkled sea. Now, sea is a noun and wrinkled is usually used with other nouns, but here it has been used with sea. So transferred epithet is the use of an adjective normally used for other nouns. Wrinkled sea. What about winged seeds? Seeds, they have wings? Of course, because they fly. Winged seeds. What about pathetic potatoes? Pathetic potatoes. You must have heard about pathetic condition, about people who are pathetic, but what about pathetic potatoes? An adjective being used with potato, whereas it is normally used with some other nouns. The next one, sluttish time. How can time be sluttish? Sluttish time. How can time be sluttish? But here it's used with time. A woman can be sluttish because a slut is called a sluttish woman, or a sluttish woman is a slut. Sluttish time? Time is sluttish. Time is compared to a disreputed woman, or we are using an adjective for time which is used for a disreputed woman. Sluttish time. Subtle time. There can be a subtle man, but how can time be subtle? Time is subtle because it steals your youth without even letting you know. Subtle time. I hope you have understood what is transferred epithet. 9th, pun. When one word has more than one meaning, one word having more than one meaning. That is pun. Like in Villa for Sale, what happens? Gaston and Mrs. Olive Smith were talking, and Mrs. Olive Smith says that she write down the name of my lawyer, and then Gaston says who, and then Mrs. Olive Smith says exactly, and Gaston is surprised, what? But then Mrs. Olive Smith says exactly, my lawyer is Mr. Who. Now who, as you know, who means who, and then who is a name also. So who? Exactly. What? Exactly, my lawyer is Mr. Who. So who has got two meanings here. Well, I hope this is understandable to you. A pun is a word that has more than one meaning. For example, in Villa for Sale, Gaston and Mrs. Olive Smith were talking. I'm repeating myself for giving you a better understanding of this figure of speech. Now, Mrs. Olive Smith and Gaston were talking, and Mrs. Olive Smith says, take down the number and name of my lawyer. And then Gaston says, who? And Mrs. Olive Smith says, exactly. Gaston is surprised. He says, what? And Mrs. Olive Smith says, exactly, my lawyer is Mr. Who. So who, Mr. Who? That's interesting. And here, the figure of speech pun is over. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to do the 10th one now. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is some sounds, sounds that suggest the meaning of the words. Sounds that suggest the meaning of the words. For example, hiss, buzz, creak, crack, clatter, snap. Now, sounds that suggest the meanings of the words now. Hiss means hiss, creak means creaking sound, clatter means clattering sound, buzz means buzzing sound, crack means cracking sound, snap means snapping sound. So sounds that suggest the meanings of the words. That is onomatopoeia. So the sounds like hiss, creak, clatter, buzz, crack, snap, they are onomatopoeia. They're examples of onomatopoeia. Clear? Let's do the next one. 11. Sonnet. Now, a sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. It is of two kinds. Italian sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet. Shakespearean sonnet because Shakespeare practiced it a lot. Shakespeare improved this. Shakespeare made some changes in it. That's why it is called Shakespearean sonnet. And we have only Shakespearean sonnet in our syllabus, so we'll discuss only this one. A Shakespearean sonnet contains 3 quatrains. Now, a quatrain means a stanza of 4 lines. 3 quatrains, and that makes 12 lines, doesn't it? Because we have 3 quatrains. A quatrain is a stanza of 4 lines. A quatrain is a stanza of 4 lines, and we have 3 quatrains in a Shakespearean sonnet. So we have 12 lines, and then plus a couplet, which means 2 lines. So in total we have 14 lines. So Shakespearean sonnet is of course a poem of 14 lines, and that is why it is called a sonnet. But in this, the division is different from the one that is in the Italian sonnet. In this we have 3 quatrains of 4 lines each and a couplet. What happens is, in the first quatrain the poet introduces the subject, and then in the other 2 quatrains he develops the subject, and then in the couplet he concludes the subject. So the couplet is actually concluding. I hope you have understood it. It's easy. So a sonnet is a poem of 14 lines, It has got two kinds, Italian sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet. But because we have only Shakespearean sonnet in our syllabus, we're going to discuss only the Shakespearean one. Shakespearean sonnet contains 3 quatrains of 4 lines each, which make 14 lines, and a couplet. A couplet is a stanza or 2 lines. So 12 plus 2 is equal to 14 lines. In Shakespearean sonnet, the poet introduces the subject in the first quatrain and then develops it in the second and in the third quatrain, and then concludes it in the couplet. That's how it is a Shakespearean sonnet. Well, my dear students, I hope this is enough for today. So bye bye, God bless you, have a great time.